Welcome back to All Things Hidden podcast. I'm your host, Krista Reynolds. As always, this is for entertainment purposes only. Please stick around at the end for what will be today a deeper meditation, which will include sacred cows, and I think you'll understand why after we get started. Okay, I have a really important topic we're going to be covering today that is something that's in the media now, and a lot of things are changing and happening, and so I felt that this was something really important to cover. It's regarding a decade-long fight where a majority of ranchers along the Point Reyes National Seashore will actually end in the next year and a half because of this controversy. The settlement announced in January by the National Park Service is the culmination of a decade-long fight between the multi-generational ranching families on the seashore and the environmental advocates who argued that their operations harm native grassland and animal species. It will phase out a dozen ranches that have lined the North Bay shoreline since before the California gold rush. We will get into the details soon with my two guests. The reason I am actually doing this is I live in Marin County, and I was able last week, just in a second's notice, run over to what was called the Marin Coalition. And it's an organization that sets up discussions for the residents of Marin to talk about civil opportunities and civil things that are happening and civil improvements. And this was happening at Dominican College. And so I got the opportunity to run in there and see what was happening. There were not only give me a second, I want to put this together clearly. This was an opportunity for the ranchers to come and speak about what was happening for them in this suit. And it was an opportunity for the Nature Conservancy group to come and speak on their behalf. So when I got there, I got the opportunity to see about 3 or 4 speakers, and one of them is my guest here, Stephanie. But I also got to see 3 that came from the Nature Conservancy. And what it appeared to me was that it seemed very kind of biased and unfair. I felt like there wasn't a solid representation of the farming community there. I felt it was a very heavy hit from the Conservancy group, and it appears that they can fly people in and have people at these events. And I really kind of felt like the farmers were being left out, probably because they work. They're busy. This isn't something that they could actually really find time to attend. But Stephanie, my guest here, did, and I was really grateful that she did, because I got to hear more about what's happening for these farmers in this controversy and what's going on, and in this present, what would we call it, Stephanie? Is it
assault?
An assault.
An assault, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would call it.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I want to introduce Stephanie first and her background. And Stephanie she's a 5th generation dairy farmer that currently helps her parents run the dairy farm in West Petaluma. Last year, when the Sonoma County farms were under attack by a local extremist group, she started a social media presence called Dairy Girl Diaries, which is on Instagram, everybody, to showcase why their organic pastures-based family farms were really struggling with a Measure J that was very misleading, and I'm going to have you explain that in just a minute. She has had the unpleasantries of dealing with various lawsuits and helping others work through lawsuits of their own due to various NGO attacks on farms. Thank you. Thank you for that. What's fun about her is she not only runs Dairy Farm, but she also participates in the Dairy Leaders Program through Western United Dairymen, which is an intense leadership program focusing on the economics and political shifts of the dairy industry. But she also is a bookkeeper. She's a mom. She raises 2 boys and in Sonoma with her husband. And what is so awesome is she's a race car driver.
No, my sister.
Oh, that's your sister. Okay, sorry. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Correction. Anyhow, she brings a lot of vibrancy to the agricultural world, and what she's hoping to do in the future is to encourage new and younger farmers so that America can come into food security and a viable food system. And so I just want to welcome you and thank you for coming. I was so impressed with you the other day when you spoke. I felt like not only do you know what's going on in this controversy, but you're in it. Your soul's in it. You are a dairy farmer yourself, and what is happening is it's hard because this is something that has been, in the Marin County area and Sonoma area for, over 100 years?
Couple hundred, I think.
Couple hundred, yeah. And so there's a real loss here. And what I'm afraid is that the people of Marin don't know about this, and Sonoma, unless you're looking for these news articles. This seemed like it went under the radar because I feel like I'm just catching up and coming up to speed on it.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to jump in and tell us a little bit about the history of this, how you're involved, what's happening with this at this point. And yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. I think that's where a lot of the outrage is coming from, because a lot of us didn't know what was happening, what was going on. And from the farmer perspective, as well as the community perspective, we're just seeing this come to light now. And we're going, why was this so quiet over the last, decade, essentially? And to be clear, there's two separate lawsuits. There's one in 2016 that was wrapped up, and then another one was filed in 2022.
Okay.
But from the same exact groups. Going after these farmers, essentially. And now with the closure and the essentially evicting these farmers out and the significant loss that we're going to have, farmers like my family and our community, it's a loss for us too, because our agriculture community in Sonoma and Marin is so small that when we lose this number of other farms, it just strains our current system that much more.
Okay, so presently, there's 12 farms that are going to be leaving, and they've got, 15 months in order to make their exit? Is that where they're at?
From the date of the settlement agreement, I believe they were given 15 months to move off of the Point Reyes National Seashore.
Yeah, another person that we're going to hopefully have on the podcast here is Albert Straus. And Albert is from the dairy creamery family of Straus. And he was telling me that this would subtract almost 15% of the national sales for Straus, which is significant. I mean, if you look at it nationwide. So this is nothing small. This matters what's happening. And what's saddening is these people are having to reconfigure their lives. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the settlement was, what maybe they were receiving in this settlement?
Sure.
And
yeah, so I don't know the ins and outs as well as Albert will, or the farmers themselves. Of course, it's all behind closed doors. But the overall side of it is that it was a settlement for $30 million to all of these farms. A lot of people will jump in and they'll say $30 million sounds like a lot. Well, after the $30 million, my understanding is that they have expenses that they have to cover first, and then it's divided up between those 12 ranches. Some of those ranches have more than one family. And then they've got legal fees they have to cover. They have all of the expenditures that they have to take care of. The dairy industry has been strained over the last decade economically, so it's not like they're shutting down something that's on the upswing. It's going to be a very difficult process for everybody.
Exactly.
And you know how much houses are here in Sonoma and Marin County, so.
Yeah, it's not, exactly. Yeah. It would hardly buy them a home. That's like $2.5 million per family. And especially after, the hundreds of years some of these families have been here. And I understand they have a lot of workers that have been with them for a really long time, a lot of them from the Latino community. Have they made any accommodations for these individuals? Like, where will they go? Especially, I understand a lot of them have been there for a long time.
Yeah, so I believe it's 120 families that are going to be relocated. The Nature Conservancy has the obligation of providing some kind of I don't know if it's like an agreement or settlement to them.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Albert, again, will know that better than me. But the big thing with that is that once they're out, what are they going to do? And with less farms, if you're a dairy farm worker and your whole life you've been milking or you've been doing something specialized, there are only so many farms you can go to in this area. So they're looking at a significant shift themselves.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, that is like pretty sad. And, it's interesting because I listened to the group from the Conservancy and, they were saying, look at the ground, the cows are, ruining the ground, and it was really interesting because I through the seasons, the ground looks really different. It looks green when it's green, and then it looks bad when it's, dark, the winter, and they've been eating it all up and that sort of thing. So, I mean, their argument for me was, it was weak. I was struggling. I was like, I'm not seeing, and the Tule elk and the farmers have existed, they've coexisted for many, many years. And, the designated space for the Tule elk has been well established, and they've been, now I've understood that the Tule elk numbers are down some. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, and maybe Albert or someone else does, and people should look into that. You should do your research about all of this.
Of course.
But the fact that they have all coexisted for so long harmoniously, if you will, everyone's, and we people in Marin and nationwide have been provided with our food, sources. I mean, I go to the farmer's market every Sunday. I love seeing my local farmers. I love saying hello to Wendy at Straus. I love saying hello to these people, and just because I know what I'm getting, I feel safe. And we're in a time in our world right now where, they're consolidating farms. They're getting rid of the small guy, and then they're building out these big, big farmhouses where I'm afraid they're cutting corners. We're not getting the same quality. And that's something that I've loved in Marin County is, we've gone out of our way to have organic food right. We can trust, food, that we can feel good about putting in our bodies. And so that's where I get a little sad about this whole scenario, is that there could be a loss. Yeah.
Well, you just hit 7 different key things that we need to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. The environment, our nutrition, our quality of food, and then the farmer knowledge that we're going to be losing, and then the consolidation of small family farms. And this is happening here at Point Reyes. This is also happening nationwide, and
it's happening worldwide.
It's happening worldwide, yes. And when you start to think about the environment, we'll start there. These farms are some of the most eloquent, highest level, highest standard, environmentally friendly farms in Northern California. Straus.
Not to mention beautiful.
Yes, and beautiful. And I think that that's one of the things, if you go out there and you see, obviously, springtime, green grass, and then come summertime, it turns to that golden brown, and the grass dies, and that's what it looks like. And then you go into the wintertime, and then you've got to be careful, because if you have, the rain starts to come back more, and drought and or heavy rainfall, that's something that we all have to mitigate. As far as the elk go, when we're talking about, the health of the elk and whatnot, the difference there is that we're just coming off of a 4-year drought, and we had the last 2 years a little bit heavier rainfall. The success of all animals, not just elk, but all wild animals, varies greatly depending on what nature gives us, right?
Exactly.
And so they're also trying to figure out those pieces as much as the farmer is. But I would argue that the elk are probably better off for farmers being there, because farmers do what they need to do to help the land. We amend the soil, we add natural organic material to it to make sure that it flourishes, and the elk gets the benefit of that.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm not surprised by the mindfulness that exists in you guys. Given that you care about the land, you cultivate it.
We have to.
Yeah.
We live off of the land. And that's one of my arguments in this whole conversation. It's completely illogical to say that farmers don't care about the environment, because the environment gives us good quality products, and good quality products come from healthy land, healthy soil.
Totally.
We live on the land. We pull water from wells off of the land, so our children are there, our grandparents are there. And so it's important to us to have healthful soils, healthful water. If we have toxic water, we have toxic land, we're not going to get the same quality.
Totally.
And from a crops perspective or an animal perspective, it goes hand in hand.
Right.
And so all these NGOs that are coming after small family farms, you're seeing them continuously say, oh, they're hurting the environment. No farmer in their right mind would purposefully harm the land. That's just not something that's helpful to us. And from an ethical, moral standpoint, of course, that's not something that we want to see. But take that all out, from a financial side, it's also hurtful to us. So it just isn't logical.
It isn't. And, you said the NGOs coming after the farms. That's an interesting comment. And I want to maybe hit on that just a little bit because there's something going on here.
How much time you got?
I know, right? Well, it's interesting. I do have a quote here I want to bring up that I thought was really interesting. Hold on a sec. Yeah. I said the deal comes after 3 environmental groups sued the Park Service in 2022, faulting it for the ecological damage done by ranchers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we elect these environmental groups? Like, why do they have this power to sue the Park Service, the government?
Well, in America, we have civil suits are allowed under the Clean Water Act right now, which is a huge problem.
Okay.
And so what happens is typically environmental groups, they're not elected, they're not regulatory bodies, they're just private nonprofit organizations. And they come after small farms and they try to either get money from them to help pay for their attorney's fees, or 2, they try and shut them out. And that's kind of the MO.
And the reason they're shutting them out is because what we talked about earlier, that they want to consolidate into bigger farms, or are they trying to are they sincerely interested in conserving the land for just tourism, for people to just look at it?
I don't want to get too conspiratorial.
It's okay. But, well, I mean, we're asking questions. This is all Socratic method right now. I'm asking a question.
Yeah, and those are the questions everyone should be answering. Why? Why are these environmental organizations, if their true goal is to help the environment, why aren't they taking less harmful, less detrimental paths forward? Because there's multiple options for these organizations to, in fact, better the environment, but not lose family farms, right? You could simply go to a farmer and, have a conversation and say, I've got this concern, and maybe they'll work with you and maybe they won't, right? But at least give them that opportunity. That opportunity was never taken. It's not taken between these organizations among all the lawsuits that I've seen.
Right.
The second option is that they could, in fact, go to regulatory bodies like the EPA or the State Water Board and say, hey, I see this problem. I think that this is an issue, and I would like for you to look into it. Those regulatory bodies have the ability to shut down farms. They have the ability. They could walk onto a farm and say, this is causing significant damage. You're done.
They could. They can also dictate improvements. They can have penalties. They can do all kinds of things. They have the ability and the authority to do so. But why? Why didn't they take that route? Well,
right.
In my mind, the reason has to do with money, right? Mm-hmm. Or it has to do with they're not going to be happy with the final they're not going to be happy with what the outcome is going to be from those regulatory bodies, and so they want something different, or they want to have the control over it. But the reality behind that is you could go to those regulatory bodies, ask them to take a position, and if they still didn't do what you wanted, then you could file your lawsuit. But why weren't those pathways taken by these organizations if their true interest was, in fact, the environment?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That really, we don't know, right?
Right, we don't know.
We're just looking at this and going, why? Well, there's an old saying, follow the money. Mm-hmm. and there's a lot of researchers that do just that so that they can come to some sort of understanding. But then you have to understand why people need that much money. Point being that, I looked at the Nature Conservancy. I just was kind of curious. It's nature.org.
Mm-hmm.
And they are huge. I mean, I think they're
international.
Giant, yeah. They're giant. And
so the Nature Conservancy was brought in to help broker the deal. The 3 NGOs that actually pursued the park in a backhanded way that evicted the farmers was the Resource Renewal Institute, the Center for Biological Diversity, and the Western Watersheds Project.
Got it. Okay.
And if you go to those websites, you'll see that Western Watershed Project, one of the things that they have posted on their website is why we're getting rid of cattle ranches.
Right.
And so they're methodically, strategically going out after cattle farms.
Why are they?
Right. Why? And again, it's one of those things, if your true intention is to help the environment, why wouldn't you collaborate with farmers? Because we know that farmers are and quality farming, regenerative, sustainable farming is better for the environment. We know that farmers take care of the land, and it's ultimately something that we can live healthfully with, as well as strengthen our food system and provide quality nutritional food.
Exactly.
So why shut these farms down, these small family farms, and lose a collective almost 1,200 years of knowledge,
Right. No, I know. So I'm looking at this Resource Renewal Institute. It's a nonprofit out of Fairfax, and I believe I noticed they had a huge uptick in donor money, like literally November of 2024 into this January. And so I don't know, I did further research, and I noticed that there's a woman who recently came on board, Deborah Mauskowitz, and I think I'm saying her name, Mauskowitz. And anyhow, she's interesting. Her background is in the United Health Group. That's kind of where she comes.
Yeah.
And looking at that, I mean, that's a huge organization. It's like one of the largest companies in the world.
Right.
Which is like, I mean, and I can't really tie that company and this situation together. That's just where she comes from. But, when you look at who's brokering this and what's happening, it's very interesting where these corporate individuals are, I guess I'm looking at is follow the money. Look at who's the donors to a lot of these NGOs. And it's a little troubling because a lot of them aren't organic. They're not companies that are looking entirely after the behalf of the people, but rather they're just large organizations that make a lot of money. And so it is a big question on the table. What is happening with our farmlands? Why are so many? I think it was you were, and I want to get over to Albert here in just a minute. I think you said that we started with 4.7 million dairy farms in America, and now we're down to 27,000.
I believe that was Albert.
Albert, yeah. And I want to introduce Albert in just one second here, because he's going to come up with a lot of information. Yeah. But that's just like troubling right there. Just to note that we have reduced so much already, and there aren't less mouths to feed. There are more mouths to feed. So this is really troubling. I want to step away from the money and following the money, and I want to go into looking and just kind of introducing Albert here, because Albert has fought the good fight here for quite a while. He has definitely been in this fight. He is I'm just looking for his information. He is a second-generation farmer and environmental innovator in the dairy farming. He owns Straus Dairy Farms in Marshall, and he's the founder and executive chair of Straus Family Creamery and a lifelong resident of Marshall. One of the quotes I wanted to give of his, if I can, gosh, my notes are all over the place here.
If I can just say, Albert is genuinely one of the most knowledgeable people, and he truly puts his heart and soul into helping the agriculture community. I feel like, Albert, you don't ever have grass growing under your feet. He is constantly moving, but yet he still finds time to call me back when I have questions for him. And,
and he's here today, which is amazing. So the quote I wanted to find, it says, the campaign to displace ranchers reflects a misguided vision of nature as a pristine playground suitable for postcards and tourists with little regard for the community or the planet. That struck me. When I read that, my heart just melted. And I was like, so I want to introduce, we're only going to hear Albert by voice, but I want to introduce him and bring him on. And Albert, we've been kind of going in a lot of different places. I'd love for you to chime in on your experience with these lawsuits and where it leaves you. I know you're one of the farms that is going to be unfortunately going away, possibly, and so,
not one of his.
Not one of his.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give it to Albert and let Albert speak, please.
Thank you for inviting me to join. So yes, it's been quite a rough ride for the farmers and the organic dairy farms. But let me give you a little bit of history of who I am and what we've done as a farming community in West Marin. About 40 years ago, we put together organic farming and food system that was a model for the world. That Prince Charles at the time, who's now king, came on his honeymoon to West Marin, who's an organic farmer as well. So it's been a model for the world. And then, so we were the first certified, my dairy was the first certified organic dairy west of the Mississippi River. And at the same time, I started Straus Family Creamery, which was the first 100% organic creamery in the United States. We now have we'll have 15 dairies in Marin, Sonoma County supplying our creamery. And almost 90% of the dairies in Marin, Sonoma County are certified organic, which has animal welfare standards. Cows have to be on pasture, max time they're on pasture. There's a lot of different, you have to build soil, you have to take care of the land. So there's a lot of different elements in certified organic farming that is very much in harmony with nature, at the same time providing high quality food for our communities. And so last October, I was invited to the World Dairy Summit in Paris by the United Nations FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and the International Dairy Federation to sign on to an international declaration around collaborating on climate change and sustainability in dairy, where the UN is saying that in the next 25 years, we have to produce as much food as to feed almost 10 billion people as we have in the last 10,000 years combined, and that dairy and livestock products are essential nutrients, and that local production is essential. Came back here, and our congressman and our supervisors saying, well, farming is dying anyway, so we're going to evict all these farmers, the 6 organic farmers and 6 cattle ranchers from Point Reyes, and it's at least about 100 Hispanic ag worker families from Point Reyes, and have nowhere for them to go. They're just evicted. They might get a little bit of compensation, but it's not enough to start a farm, the dairy farms, and there's very little land. And so our whole community in West Marin is on a tipping point and a crisis that we are going to lose everybody in West Marin. We're losing a third of our dairy farms in Marin County. We produce over half the organic milk in California in Marin, Sonoma County. And my mission and our mission at Straus Family Creamery is to sustain family farms by producing in Marin, Sonoma County by producing high quality, minimally processed organic food, and to help revitalize rural communities through education and advocacy everywhere. The fact is, in West Marin, we need 1,000 affordable housing units, and the county has put over 1,000 into short-term rentals. And so there's no balance, there's no future for our communities. Over the last, I'm just going to keep going because I have a lot of great.
Please keep going.
Over the last decade, I've documented that we've lost a third of our school-aged children, 41% are high school students, and our median age went from 46 to 56. There is no next generation. And so we're on a tipping point and a crisis that we need to help in the leadership of our leaders, our political leaders. The community is struggling to survive, and the National Park Service, along with the Nature Conservancy, is evicting everybody without any plans to relocate or make them whole. So it's a very devastating part. The human aspect.
Oops, we lost him sound.
Don't know what. Oh, you take that off. Sorry, we'll be back. Just bear with us. There you go.
And that's what's being recognized by the UN, but also that the National Park Service wouldn't allow carbon farm plants. They wouldn't allow compost application. They wouldn't allow management of the pastures. They wouldn't allow stock animals to be on the land at the rates that needed to be to manage the pastures properly. And they didn't allow long-term leases that allowed improvement in the infrastructures. And then they said they were polluting, which wasn't true either. And so it's been a whole drive to squeeze these farms out of business.
Albert,
lives and
I was going to say, there was a little bit of an NDA put on a lot of the farmers. They weren't able to, because a lot of people didn't know about this. This is part of the problem.
I was exposed in it over the last couple of years, but the efforts by the National Park Service and the Nature Conservancy was to subvert the public process. There was a public process that gave 20-year leases to these farms. And in 2021, after the first lawsuit, and then these litigants sued, in mediation, they put gag orders, and the farmers joined on the side of the Park Service, but the Park Service negotiated against them. And so the Park and the Nature Conservancy, there's one lawsuit that says that they conspired to evict these farmers, and so the whole argument that these farms are detrimental to the environment is not true and is misleading, and the park has not managed their resources. They have not managed the elk like they were supposed to. They didn't manage the lands, so there's a lot of weeds and invasive species happening. So it's a challenging time for us out here in West Marin, and we need every support.
What does that support look like? What
can talk about Measure J in Sonoma County, which last fall we had an organization out of Berkeley saying that we are factory farms in Sonoma County, where 85% of the dairies were certified organic, and we were able to educate the public, and we defeated by over 85%. They wanted to close down all dairy farms, all poultry farms. And it was and once the public understood what was happening, that brands like Straus and Clover were going to be devastated by this loss of our farming and food production, that this was not a direction that the public wanted even.
Yeah, and that was a huge thing for us, I think, where it was an eye-opener for us farmers. Albert, I'm sure you're the same way, that we recognized that the community was unaware because of what us farmers were doing, because they're looking at some of the farms. Well, yeah, we don't want factory farms. Well, how many factory farms do we have here in Sonoma and Marin County, right? All of our dairy farms are organic, or most of them are organic, and all of them are pasture-based at least. And so, it's a moot point.
Right.
And so for me at least, it was a way that we started to get out there and say, hey, check out what we've got going on here. And I think that coming off of that whole Measure J thing, the community is now seeing this point raise issue, and they're starting to go, wait a second, we just worked really hard to save our community of local family farmers. Why are we now losing all of these small local family farmers?
Right. So when they say it's decades long, and this is what I heard from the other side, is that the farmers knew this day was coming, and I'm like, that I don't know if that's true. That the leases were only for so long, and I'm not saying that on their behalf. I'm just saying this is the story that they're putting out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if I were on the opposition, if I was on the opposing side, I would use that as one of my arguing points.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's a farmer out there that signed up to sell their land in 1962 under the Point Reyes Act with the assumption that they're going to eventually be ending their multi-generational farming. Most farmers go in, and you're going in to farm for your future generations, for your
course.
children's children.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Albert?
Well, yes, dairy farming they have a pastoral zone in Point Reyes that was meant to stay in agriculture in perpetuity. My mother was a co-founder of Marin Agricultural Land Trust, the first agricultural land trust in the nation, to preserve agricultural land and to keep it in agriculture in perpetuity. And they pulled together farmers, environmentalists, community members, and governments to have a common vision and come around the future. And we supported the formation of the Point Reyes National Seashore because it had a balance of wilderness, farming, and the different elements, keeping the community intact.
Yeah.
Same thing with the California Coastal Commission. They have supposed to be promoting and enhancing agricultural rural communities in balance with tourism and public access. It's become a playground for the rich and not accessible to not producing our own food. We're importing a lot of our food now. I can give you statistics on that, but we've become disconnected with our own food supply, and it's a dangerous way to be. And we've lost a lot of our rural communities because, across this country, and it's not only happening here; it's happening across the country. Point Reyes is not the only place. They've done it in Texas. They're doing it in Ohio now at the Cuyahoga National Park. The Park Service is trying to eliminate farms across this country and make it open. They have an idea of pristine open space that has no people or animals on it, and it is a dangerous place to be because animals and for wildfires is we have wildfires every year because I've documented we've taken all the animals off the land, and yes, we have climate change, but we have to manage differently. So I put a proposal into the administration.
I want to direct. Okay, let's talk. There's this suit, and some of it came to a conclusion in I think it was January. However, I understand for this to actually play out and to remove. Every cow has to be removed in these 15 months, and if one doesn't for any reason, then nobody gets their money. Is that true? Like, it's they kind of have, and I also understand that there is a new suit by what I think it was you mentioned the Neiman and the Evans Ranch, and they're up.
Yeah,
Neiman's. Thank you. So they're not having this, and they're in for it sounds like the good fight. Can you talk to any of that, Albert?
Yeah, Bill and Nicolette Neiman filed a lawsuit, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, against the National Park Service and the Nature Conservancy, saying that the record decision that was arbitrary and didn't go through a C-Corps public process and didn't get approval from the Coast Commission is invalid, and that we need to keep this land in agriculture.
And I believe they also asserted that they didn't follow the NEPA procedure, right?
Right.
Well. Yeah.
National Environmental Protection Act. Yeah. So they're challenging that, saying that it's destroying our community essentially. So that's one lawsuit, and then Andrew Giacomini has another lawsuit on behalf of the Hispanic families in Point Reyes, saying that them eliminating the housing is not acceptable, and he actually says he has a conspiracy claim against the National Park Service and Nature Conservancy, and I think some of the litigants.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I think a lot of people are very excited as far as the community goes that this lawsuit is happening and moving forward, because there needs to be somebody standing up against these NGOs for starting these types of wars essentially on family farmers. We need to stop that from happening. It has to have an endpoint.
Well, you have some really, really passionate souls in Marin. I tell you, they're almost too passionate, some of them. And yet I think this is a really good opportunity as we're laying down the tracks of what's actually happened, where we're at, that who's ever listening, our listeners here, know how they can get involved here. What can we do at this juncture? Because, I guess I want to ask that question again. If I know some of these farmers have just been beat up and they're just ready to go because it's been a long journey for them. And there are others that are heartbroken. They don't want this to happen. They're still kind of like dismayed by what's gone down, and they're not ready to leave. And so what happens here? Is there anything we can do? I know Albert wrote in a great opinion piece called Dead Set on Saving Point Reyes. Environmentalists want to kill its best stewards. This is at the San Francisco Standard, so I will put it underneath so people can link to it and look at it. But you talk about a couple of ways in which we can help. And I want maybe you to speak to that, Albert, like in this article, and maybe you can say it out loud so our listeners can go and do the work.
Right. I think there's a lot of anger and upset in West Marin around these agreements. And what I've proposed is that the public write and call the new Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, and also demand that, I'm also going to ask for people to hold Nature Conservancy accountable to help relocate and fund the relocation of the farms and the community into West Marin, other parts of West Marin outside the park, and also that the land needs to stay in agriculture, even if it's not with the same families. There needs to be a trust, an agricultural trust that takes over the management of the parkland in the pastoral zone in the park. So those are a couple of the asks that I have for the public, is to support us, support our future, because without that we won't have one.
Yeah, no, thank you. I hear that. Albert, while we have you here, is there anything else that you'd like to share with everyone? If there's anything we didn't cover that's important for the public to know, please.
I think that it's all these assertions that the farms are evil and the community needs to go. It's very insensitive and we need the support of our community. These farmers, you say that some are ready to go. Actually, everybody's angry and upset and
Thank
depressed
you for that
about
correction.
leaving their homes, their livelihoods, and having to move out of the community they've known their whole lives. And so I feel we need to pull together as a community and support each other, and not say this is not acceptable. This is not okay to come in and destroy our farms, our communities, and our food system, and so I think it's these outsiders who come in, Nature Conservancy, a $1.6 billion international conservation organization. This is unacceptable. This is not a way to be, and this is not a society. We need to pull together as a society and start talking to each other and coming up with a common vision, common future. This is not okay.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah.
Please, do you want to share anything on that?
No, I mirror everything that he says, and I think that that's, again, why the community and why the rest of us farmers are outraged by this, because it was indecent. It was not integrous, and it was not done with honesty and transparency. And if you're doing something good, why wouldn't you be transparent? And so as they've moved forward, and to be clear, settlement agreements are not willing acts of great, this is something wonderful to move forward with. It's this or nothing, right? And that's, I think, the reason why most of the farmers took that route versus continuing to fight. Because if you've ever been in a lawsuit before, they're exhausting.
Totally. Well, and the payouts, it's insulting.
It's incredibly insulting.
It's incredibly insulting. And when you look at the Nature Conservancy and you look who's their donors, I mean, I can just Anheuser-Busch, Amazon, Pepsi, Walt Disney, Coca-Cola. My gosh, it goes on and on. These are heavy hitters. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence, and that might be troubling all by itself. I mean, it asks the question, might we be at the place where we need to, turn over the money lenders' tables? I mean, seriously. And don't mean to be totally biblical, but it's kind of where we're at. Like, it's not okay that you have all this money and you can just stomp on things and decide, like I said, I'm still struggling that, they have this much power. Like, I've been having trouble with this across the board, that these individuals and these corporations, I mean, if you saw our last podcast, I talked about the flip that happened, and I'll say it again because it's so important for people to get this, that back when our Constitution was created, it was created under God, and we the people were under God, and under us was the government. They served us, and under them was the corporations, and the corporations served the government. Right. But somewhere down the road here, it got flipped. And now we have all these corporations with entirely too much money and too much power telling our government what to do, which is then telling us people what we have to do. And they were here to serve us. Mm-hmm. And then, as I always say, God gets lost in the mix. Mm-hmm. and it's really sad because, we need a miracle right now. We need, but we most importantly, and the reason I wanted to do this podcast is both of your voices needed to be heard.
I appreciate that.
The story needs to be heard because Marin loves and cares. I go to the farmers market every Sunday, like I said, and it is packed. And these people care about the farmers and they care about the food quality that they're getting. And I realize we're just one part of the world, but this is happening worldwide. And these big conglomerates, these big organizations with too much money, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I'm not ready to eat 3D meats that are printed out of a machine. I'm not there. I'm never gonna be there. And so I'm really glad that I think, as I said, more people need to know. I thought that there was an uneven representation at the coalition, and I also felt that I talked to people in Marin County alone, and not many people really know the story. They know a little bit. They know the stories that were given that I read, like that really don't explain the farmers' stories, and such an important story. So I want to thank both of you for showing up today and just really sharing, I can feel it from your hearts that you want to save. Do you think we can save this? Do you think we can get enough people on board? And what do we think?
I don't give up.
Yeah.
One last point I want to make is that it's a very short timeline. We're talking a couple months versus they gave them 15 months, but a lot of these farmers are going to be leaving before winter time, and some of them are leaving in May and June of this year. So we're talking a couple months. So this is not something that we can put off at all.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna put your article below wherever this gets posted, so that people can look directly at who they're supposed to reach out to. I really don't want them to miss that. And do you have anything else you'd like to say, Stephanie?
I hope that everyone starts asking the why and really paying attention to what's happening to your local farming community, because pretty soon our food system is going to be constrained because of all these NGOs and their skits that they're putting on for everybody.
Yeah.
And ask the questions, can farmers function cohesively with the environment? The answer is yes, but ask that question before you file suits that are just going to take everybody out.
Right. Yeah. And people just, you think it's not going to hit your home. It's not going to hit your neighborhood, but it is. It's going to hit our homes. It's going to hit our neighborhoods soon.
It already has.
We're short of organic milk nationwide now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and and people know there's such a difference between, organic and mass-produced milk, and so what you guys have provided, thank you. It's been quality that we can live by and feel good by, and God bless us. Let's hope that we can find a way to fight the good fight. Cows are sacred to me. I'm a yogi, and I go to India, and the cows literally roam everywhere. Like they go anywhere and everywhere, and they know where to go home to get fed at night.
Yep.
And they know what their job is first thing in the morning is to give their community the milk.
Yep.
And then they roam around. And so I have I spent quite a bit of time in India as a yogi, and I just have such a special place in my heart for them. They're amazing, what they provide in the way of sustenance and just, they're sacred. And that is, the land is sacred. The ground is sacred. Our lives are sacred. These cows are sacred. And some of them give up their lives so that we can have a greater sustenance through meat and what have you. And so God bless them. And both of you, I really I want to support you any way I can, and I want to continue to get this out far and wide in the Sonoma, Marin. But really, this is a topic for nationwide. This is super important. So I think you're not only going to help people here, but you're going to help people nationwide to do the good fight. So thank you. Thank you so much. Albert, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Blessings,
Bye,
everybody.
And now, a meditation by Krista Reynolds.
Welcome, everyone, to another meditation. When life seems on the outside to appear really difficult, possibly unfair, like our podcast today, it's really nice to know that we have tools like meditation, where we can sit and ground and somehow try to make sense of the things we are hearing in the outside world that may not resonate well with what's going on inside of us. There might be a disconnect. So let's allow ourselves for this meditation to just come again to a seated position, to find our way into our bodies as we're sitting up tall. So feel like your spine's in, your heart's lifted, your shoulders are rolling back, and your sit bones are grounding. And now let's engage the breath. With your mouth closed, Ujjayi breathing, slowly draw breath in. And when you're ready, slowly let that breath out, blowing it out or releasing it out the back of the throat through the nose, and feel your shoulders dropping, your belly softening, and your sit bones grounding. Again, slowly breathe in through the back of the throat, through the nose, mouth closed. Feel your body filling with prana. When you're full, release that breath softly out the back of the throat through the nose or blow it out, and just feel the various gripping and holding patterns in the body, releasing, grounding you. Again, mouth closed, draw breath in. Keep filling, feel your spine in, your heart elevated. Take it up into the space between the brain and skull. And as you transition to an exhale, feel your brain kind of softening away from the skull, release pressure around the forehead, around the eyes, around the jaw. And if you haven't dropped your gaze or closed your eyes, please do, and start to feel your body melting into center. Breathing in and breathing through. We're going to take you on a little journey. As you breathe in and breathe through and you feel the vastness of space and time inside of you, we are not limited by the physicality of this body. For it is through our breath that we come to know that we are spirit, and that spirit moves in and out of the body. So we breathe in and breathe through, and we connect with our solar plexus. That is our third chakra. And it is there that we have what is the eternal flame. This third chakra is governed by fire, and there is a flame that never goes out inside of us. And even when we move beyond this world, beyond our physical form, this flame is eternal. And it travels on to our next incarnation. It might be just in spirit form for a while, or we might take another body right away. It depends. So allow yourself to just breathe into this third chakra. Feel your flame. Breathe out, just ground, and feel the fire at your center. This fire gives you courage, gives you strength. It allows you to possibly do things you thought you couldn't do, to take risks, and just to have the energy to get up and get it done each day. So just breathe in and breathe through and just really acknowledge this. So while you're in your third chakra and you're looking into this beautiful flame, be it large or small, however it comes into your mind's eye, I want you to imagine that in that flame is a very far off place, a place you may have already visited, but maybe you haven't. The land is called India, and you are walking through a beautiful town in India, and there are lots of people. More people than you're used to, for the streets are filled. People are walking every different direction. But what's interesting is when you raise yourself up a little bit and you look out a block in one direction or the other, you all of a sudden notice that there are cows walking amongst the people. And not a herd of them, but rather just a single one here and a single one there. So I want you to imagine as you travel and you walk that you want to go greet one of these cows. Make your journey. And even though you might have hesitation because you're not used to being around cows, take a moment just to have courage in this third chakra. And imagine that you put your hand on the side of its neck and you make a connection with it through your eyes to its eyes. And you let it know that you see it, you feel its beautiful sacred energy. And while your hand's on there, this beautiful cow tells you its story. Its story of one that allows them to walk freely during the day, to just roam as they see fit, to go wherever they want to go. And they are deeply respected wherever they go. And then they know how to return home at night to the family that houses them, that feeds them. And then they know to wake up in the morning and provide, to give, and to do the work that they're meant to do. They allow themselves to be milked. They give milk to their community. And once their job is done, they head back out and they roam the streets of India. And you can feel the story, and they tell you again and again, I love my life because I am deeply respected. I am seen as sacred because I give substance, I give life, I roam freely, I have a family to return to each day. And the cow reminds us that this is all available to us, each one of us. This work, this family, this freedom. So I want you for a moment, while you're just standing next to this beautiful cow, to breathe this work. Breathe this family. Breathe this freedom into your body. And let yourself just ground in knowing that you are sacred, just as this cow is. You are free, just as this cow is. You have family, even though it may not be your blood family. You have family around you, people who care about you, love you, and you get to provide the same for them. And you have a place called home, a place deep inside of you that you get to return to each night as you rest, breathing in and breathing through. And you sleep well because you know you are seen as sacred, and you know you are respected just as these cows are. There's deep respect. So just breathe in and breathe through as you return back away from your little journey, thanking your sacred cow, thanking India, traveling back, if you will, into this body, into this time, into this space. And you can take this beautiful message with you, breathing in and breathing through. Nice breath in. Satnam Namaste. Thank you for joining us. All Things Hidden podcast.
This show and many others is brought to you by Madmana Studios. For more information, contact us at latham@madmanastudios.com. That's LATHAM at Madmana, MADMANA Studios.com. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to the All Things Hidden podcast. Thank you.